A big weekend in Boston College football players getting ready for the NFL draft. None bigger than Zion Johnson, who had an incredible week. We're going to talk about that with Mitch Wolfe, who was at the Senior Bowl. With all of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. I'm also the editor and publisher of bcbulletin.com. Make sure you check out my work there. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has got you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, today we are all about the weekend of postseason bowls, as many Boston College players getting ready for the NFL draft had their performances critiqued by scouts, analysts, and all in between. And one of those people that were there to check them all out was Mitch Wolfe. Mitch, how's it going?
Doing good. I'm finally back in my apartment after some flight trouble with weather and everything. So it's good to be home and excited to be talking about these BC guys. All
right. So I think what people want to know most about is the name that has popped up the most this week, Zion Johnson. Now, Johnson, he came into this Senior Bowl week, a second rounder, most likely, depending on who you're talking to, a first or second guard in the NFL draft. Mitch, what did he do for himself this week?
I think that he probably locked himself in as a first round pick this week. And I say that because I was talking to a lot of people there and asking as many people as I could about him. He had a ton of fans. One of the biggest one is Brandon Thorne, who's a trench scout. He does online trench scout. He does a lot of work with offensive, defensive line, works with Duke Manyweather, who's a big time trainer of offensive linemen. And he said that he had Zion Johnson as his number one guard going in and was his number one guard going out. He said he has him above Kenyon Green, who's the guard / tackle from Texas A&M. And I think the biggest reason that Zion is kind of locking himself in as a first round pick is because he comes in this week and we all kind of expect him to play guard. We, as BC fans, we know he can play tackle. It's probably not where he is best, but he can do it. And so he measures in this week at 6'2 3/4, 314 pounds, 10 and 7/8 inch hands, 33 and 7/8 inch arms, 82 and 7/8 inch wingspan. And all those arm and wingspan numbers are very good for guard. They're a little small for tackle, but it's possible. We've seen him do it. And he ends up basically spending the whole week playing center because due to injuries and just due to the guys that they brought in, there weren't a lot of guys who had a lot of center experience. So he ended up playing that a lot. And I talked to him twice and he said he's never really played center. So he's been doing some work on it, in the off season. He was actually the backup center this year. So if Alec Lindstrom had gone down, he would have stepped in and he was really good at center. I think there were some growing pains early on, especially in the one-on-one drills where the defensive linemen have a natural advantage. All those one-on-one drills just favor whoever is the attacking player. And he had some reps that were not so great, especially against UConn's Travis Jones, who had a fantastic week. But he settled in, and once they got into team drills, he was unstoppable. He was dominant. And I mentioned this to you, and I said earlier that he was on the field. He was one of the first 3 or 5 players on the field every single day. Just taking some, pass sets, getting out of his stance, doing some extra center snap exchange with the quarterbacks. And he was always one of the last players to leave the field, working some extra snaps with Kenny Pickett and the other quarterbacks on his team. So I think teams really will love that. They'll love his versatility and his dedication to the craft.
Now, you also texted me, Mitch. We're talking about Zion possibly being a first round draft pick. You talked to someone who said they saw him anywhere going from 10th to the second round.
I rechecked the quote and it was from 12 to 30, and they wouldn't be surprised anywhere in between those picks. So that's a first round pick. I would be a little surprised at 12, but Zion Johnson has shown that he can legitimately play all 5 positions on the offensive line, which is a rare ability.
Yeah, I think I put it up on BC Bulletin that his versatility and his dedication. As you said, he was the first one off. His ability to just go out there and just do what the coaches ask him to do, and his hard work. I know Jeff Hafley said none of this surprises him that he was also named Senior Bowl national team player of the week.
He was I think he was the overall practice player of the week. Both teams overall, he was the number one guy in practice. So, we saw Hunter Long win the national or the whichever team it was, the tight end award last year. And Zion Johnson won the whole thing this year. And I think that teams and both the teams that were just scouting the game and the coaching staffs that were running the game noticed how dedicated he is to, perfecting his craft.
So, Mitch, just to remind people, because I think some people don't understand how the Senior Bowl week works. What is more important for a guy like Zion Johnson? Is it the practices or the game?
The game doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Like, I left before the game. A lot of people leave before the game, especially NFL people. Some of the media stays because they're covering the game for kind of the big websites. But the game doesn't really matter and I'll say they try harder probably than the Pro Bowl, which, by the time people are listening to this, that'll be over, but we'll be seeing that today. They try harder than that, but the game is structured such that, you can't really run a full offense or defense. And part of that's because you only have 3 days of practice. Like, for example, the Jets during practice, every single defensive play they ran cover 3, every single one. There was no cover 2, no cover 4, barely any cover 1 man, just pure cover 3. So like, there's not a ton of stuff you can really see just because you're limited on time. So these practices are more important than the Senior Bowl game. And I would say that for most positions, the team drills in practice are more important than the one-on-ones. The one-on-ones get the engagement where, players make crazy plays, they embarrass their competition, but the team drills are the ones that matter. And that's where Zion was really effective. It's
so funny that you're bringing up the games. Yesterday afternoon, we've been kind of battling back and forth between the Olympics, and we were going to put it on, and the All-Star hockey game was on. And my son, my 3-year-old, was like, "Oh, what's that?" I'm like, and he likes playing hockey outside. I watched about 2 minutes of this, and I'm like, this is awful. They're just standing around. There's no one playing defense, not even like resembling defense. They're just standing there. And then basically the offensive forwards are just ripping slap shots and wrist shots past goalies. I'm like, I can imagine for football, it's very similar in terms of like, it's vanilla. It's not that interesting. So it's good to hear that, like, at the portion that mattered, Zion had his big moment.
Yeah. And like I said, the game is definitely played at a higher intensity than the professional All-Star games, because, these guys know that if they're slacking, like, that's going to look bad from NFL teams. So they are trying hard. It's just that there isn't as much you can learn as, one might think, I would say.
And what teams, like, this is really early, but like, if you were to look at some teams that you think would be a good fit for Zion, I know you probably have one in mind. What are some teams that you think would be a good fit for him heading into the NFL draft right now?
I mean, I've said that I'm a Steelers fan. I talked to Zion. He said he grew up a Steelers fan. So, if he goes to them at 20, I'll be thrilled. Looking at the draft board right now, I would say he's probably a little small for Baltimore at 14. They like picking really big offensive linemen. The Chargers at 18 that'd be an interesting pick because they need offensive line help at almost every position. So he'd be good there. Let's see. Cardinals, that would be an interesting pick. They have Zach Allen, so they've shown a propensity towards BC players. They need some offensive line help moving forward. Buffalo could be interesting. They've obviously have multiple BC guys, and Tommy Sweeney and Matt Milano. They need some kind of guard help moving forward. Tennessee, another one. There's some BC connections there. They need some guard help moving forward. So like I need like a lot of the playoff teams, because playoff teams at the back end of the draft, usually they're kind of they have less flaws, obviously, so they're kind of willing to take those positions that might not be as a high priority, but they're like, all right, this guy can step in and start immediately. And I think that's what a lot of teams saw with Zion Johnson, that he's a day one starter. Like, he can come in and fill in at either guard spot. And, if somebody goes down at center, he can fill in there. If you're really devoid of talent at tackle and somebody goes down, he can step in there and, at least hold the fort down for a week or something.
All right. In a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk about the other Boston College players that had postseason bowl games this weekend. We'll get into Brandon Sebastian, Trey Berry, and Ben Petrula. Before we do that, I want to thank each and every single one of you who has made Locked On Boston College your first listen every week. If you listen to this every morning, I want to thank each and every one of you, because you make the difference here. everyone who makes this part of their daily routine, whether it's walking the dog, driving to work, listening at your office, that makes a huge difference because the more listeners that we get, the more opportunities we get to bring in some bigger names and to do some things. So thank you all. And if this is your first listen, I want to welcome you. We're a daily Boston College podcast. We do this 5 days a week in a nice 20 to 25 minute format. So you get all your Boston College news and analysis sent directly to your phone or computer. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. I'm joined by Mitch Wolfe. Mitch was down at the Senior Bowl. And one of the big news items, big for me because I'm interested in all this kind of stuff, was that Trey Berry was like a last-minute addition to the national team in the Senior Bowl. Now, Trey Berry was also part of the NFLPA Bowl last weekend, but I'm guessing because he's an Alabama resident, it wasn't very hard to get him to the Senior Bowl. Mitch, what did you see from Trey this weekend?
Yeah, so Trey Berry showed up on Thursday, which was the third and final day of practice because Ohio State's Jeremy Ruckert, he tight end. He went down with an injury and would miss the rest of the week in the game. So they called up Berry because he, it's been a little while since he had his bowl game, so he was fresh. He's from Spanish Fort, Alabama, which is relatively close to Mobile, so kind of on the way for him. They called him up, and I was watching. That was the practice that was televised on ESPN, so that was nice because they didn't really let a lot of media into the indoor practice facility there. And from what I saw, he looked pretty decent. Again, there's a lot of tight ends there, so he didn't get a ton of snaps, especially in practice. There was one play where I thought some of his route running could have been better, where the defender made a nice play on the ball to bat it away. But from what I saw, he's still going to be some team should be interested in him as a red zone weapon just because of his size, his wingspan, his ability to elevate and make contested catches in the red zone. So, the blocking still, he's still got to get a little better with that. But yeah, I thought he did pretty well. He only played, 9 snaps in this game, 3 of which were pass receiving snaps, 9 of which were run blocking snaps. So, not a ton to glean from that. I'll have to go back and rewatch the game again to see when he played and how he did. But I think teams will like that he was able to get there on short notice and, get suited up and, look the part.
Interesting. It sounds like he's still probably a 6th or 7th round draft pick, which is what his grade was last year, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with him was just missing a lot of time with the injury, which kind of just prevented him from being able to, get better at the blocking and that kind of thing. So I think just because of his size and athleticism, like that, when you're taking those late round picks, you kind of, some teams are going to want to take guys that maybe are a little higher risk because it's this pick is kind of doesn't mean anything. And we think that the lesser athletes will fall and go undrafted, so they'll want to say okay, well, I'm going to take a swing on this guy who's a better athlete. And, we're worried about some other team feeling the same way.
All right. So I know another name that I saw you talking about a lot in terms of his play was Brandon Sebastian, who was in the Shrine game, along with Ben Petrula, correct?
Alec Lindstrom was at Shrine game.
Oh, Alec Lindstrom. I'm sorry. I got the wrong name. So talk a little bit about what you saw from Brandon Sebastian.
Yeah, Brandon Sebastian played a ton in the Shrine game, which I was very happy to see because I was concerned that he was going to kind of fall by the wayside in terms of getting snaps. But he played 67 snaps in the Shrine game, which is great to see. I posted some of his clips last night, and he was doing a lot of stuff. He's playing outside. He had played a ton of snaps, like I said. He had a really nice fit against the run down in the red zone where he shot the gap and made a tackle to prevent a guy from getting the end zone. He broke up a pass. He had a really nice, he was playing against Emeka Emezi, who's the wide receiver from NC State. So a guy that he's familiar with a good bit. So that was interesting to see. He did have a kind of a bad penalty on one of those plays, the quarterback scrambles and the wide receivers kind of running all around, and he accidentally just grabbed him, and that gave the offense another opportunity, which was kind of sad. But I was really impressed by Sebastian, and he was playing on special teams too. So he just had a ton of snaps. And I guess that indicates to me that the coaching staffs there liked what they saw and they wanted to get him plenty of opportunities. So, I want to see how he runs, how he tests at the combine and the pro day, because he is a little on the lighter side just in terms of his weight. So, if he needs to test well, because if he's small and he tests poorly, that's a bit of a death knell for a cornerback. But if he tests well, and that can overcome that less than ideal size, and he can be he'll be an interesting late round pick.
I saw and I said it to you that he was one of the fastest clocked cornerbacks in that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to know. I mean, I never knew of him as a speedy defensive back, but that's going to be definitely something in his favor. Now, do you think this week helped his draft stock as someone who could get drafted?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I thought going into this season, I was kind of on the fringe as to whether he'd get drafted. I thought he had a pretty solid season, working through injury. I mean, that's the thing with Sebastian. It's always been solid. I don't think it's ever been, completely dominant, locked down, guys like Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley or even Andrew Booth. It's never been like that, but he's always been solid. He doesn't really give up huge plays. So that's good to see. He has experience on special teams. Teams will really like that for guys who they're drafting on day 3. So yeah, I think he's really helped himself. I think the earliest right now I could see him would probably be the 6th round. But hey, I mean, that's you're still an NFL player then.
And Alec Lindstrom was our final one. And now he going into this week was probably graded as the 2nd center in the draft behind Tyler Linderbaum of Iowa. What did you notice anything? I know with TV sometimes it's hard to catch the offensive line, but any takeaways from Alec Lindstrom's play?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch it again. I mean, it looks like he only got 8 snaps if I'm looking at this right, which I thought he played. I guess he must have only played on the first 2 drives, but the clip that was going around, he had a really nice play where he got out in front of a screen pass that went for 60 some yards. So that's good to see him, getting out in the hoof. I would say with Lindstrom, I'm a little concerned about the lack of length, just because in centers you can get away with that a little bit, but some of his measurements are, in really low percentiles for how centers get drafted these days. So again, this is kind of the same thing I said with Sebastian. In order for him to, kind of maintain that hold on center 2, he's got to show that he tests well athletically at the combine and the pro day. But like I was saying, this is a pretty weak center class. I was very surprised that Lindstrom did not get the call for the Senior Bowl, because after Linderbaum, and like I said, Zion Johnson had to play a lot of center because there just weren't enough guys there to do it, and they were moving guys in and out of that position. So I was surprised he didn't get the call to Shrine. Based on what I saw on Twitter, it seemed like the guys were having a little more fun in Las Vegas, if you can believe it. They had a big event where they went to this esports arena and spent the night playing video games with each other on these big screens, which looked really fun. So, I don't blame him for going to Las Vegas instead of Mobile, but I thought he did decently. I don't really see guys who could leap him right now for center 2, but he's still got to test well at the combine and the pro day.
All right, Mitch, thank you so much for stopping by. In our final segment, I'm going to be speaking about everything that happened this weekend, including women's basketball's game against Virginia Tech. Men's hockey continues their descent into oblivion, and everything else. Mitch, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE. You can also find my work at aroundtheblock.atbnetwork.com. It's where I posted my winners and losers from each day of practice. I'll be posting my all Senior Bowl team ideally today. If not, it'll come out tomorrow with kind of the best performers at every position. And just, make sure you follow me there for all of my draft content.
And make sure to follow Mitch on BC Bulletin as well, as Mitch will be doing some BC work as well. Thank you, Mitch, and we'll talk again soon, and we'll be right back. Let's talk about our good friends over at Built Bar. This is the time of the year I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually do enjoy eating them. If you tried the Puffs, if you haven't, you're missing out on one of the best Built Bar, best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And just like the Built Bars, they're 100% covered in chocolate. You have to check them out. Puffs are fan favorite with some incredible flavors, including cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. So good, these are going to be your new favorite. And all Built Bars are 100% covered in chocolate. Yes, Puffs included, and it's 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein, replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories, but the Built Bar, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You're not going to beat that. And some of the regular flavors are so good. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and this month, Try the white cookie chocolate cookies and cream. They are delicious and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they're going to make it. It'll be delicious and it will be good for you. So head on over to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black. It was nice to have Mitch back on. We haven't seen him in a couple of weeks, but he'll be back to talk draft stuff later on as we get closer to the draft and for Pro Day. One of the things that Trey Berry let slip during one of his Senior Bowl interviews was the date of the Pro Day for Boston College football, which is going to be March 19th. That was what Chase Goodbread tweeted out. I can't confirm that yet, but that's the date that Trey Berry said. So it'll be interesting to see. There's going to be some really interesting players from Boston College in that. You're going to see you'll probably see Brandon Sebastian. Not sure if Zion will actually do it or not. I mean, if he's already done what he needs to, he doesn't need to. I'm sure Alec Lindstrom will be there. Ben Petrula. You might see Travis Levy. A few players like that. So that will be coming down the line. Now, this weekend in Boston College sports, it was a quiet weekend. Which was nice. I mean, sometimes you like just having a quiet weekend. Men's basketball was off. They're going to play Tuesday against Syracuse, who just smoked Louisville. But women's basketball, they played on Sunday against Virginia Tech and got smoked. Not going to really get into the nitty gritty of this game because I didn't catch it. But this they're now losers of 3 out of the last 4. The only win was a close win over a really bad Virginia team. They're really working their way out of the bubble in terms of getting themselves in the tournament. We saw BC women's basketball go on a really good rip for a while where they were playing really well, kind of sliding back into some really poor play, especially on the offensive side. It seems like they're struggling to get buckets. They're going to need to start pulling off some wins quick. They're challenged. They got a challenging schedule coming up. So it might, they're going to need to pull off a few big wins because their spot on the bubble is starting to fade. Now hockey, hockey. Hockey again. They played on Friday, at the Heights against UMass Lowell. UMass Lowell is the best team in Hockey East this year, and Boston College lost again. That's now 8 out of their last 9, I believe. At least this game they didn't get blown out. I mean, this is how poor the season has gone. Is that to the point where you're just hoping that they're not going to let. I was joking with a friend of mine who's a UMass Lowell fan. I said, BC went up 1-0, and then UMass Lowell tied it, and I go, look, they're going to score 5 goals in a row. He goes, nah, they won't. At least that didn't happen this time. So credit to the BC for kind of hanging in there. It was a goal late in the third period that ended it. Now, for BC, today is a big one. BC men's hockey kicks off the 69th Bean Pot at the TD Garden, and that game will be on NESN. It's a 7:45 start against Northeastern, who is ranked. BC will be without Mark McLaughlin, Jack McBain, and Drew Hellison, who are all in the Olympics. They are playing really poorly. I don't have a good feeling about this one. But I had to laugh. I think BC men's hockey put up it's start of trophy season time to turn the page. I'm like, whew, that's some braggadocious talk there, my friends. But we'll have to see. I mean, anything can happen, and there's always a perfect time to start pulling off a win streak. But the Bean Pot, that's you hate to see BC going into playing so poorly, but that's where they're at. And someone had tweeted at me or sent me a direct message, and I'm going to keep their name off because I don't know if they wanted me to use it. But they were talking about our episode from last week when we were talking about men's hockey, and I was talking about all the issues that they had with the defense and the goaltending all being kind of a mess. And they brought up, they said, the other piece that we've noticed is that they have the moxie's not there, right? Like when you hit them, metaphorically, they don't seem to hit back, right? Like they just kind of seem to wilt, and that's not a good thing, right? Like we saw with that game against Harvard earlier this week, where BC goes down, they go up and then they let up a couple goals, and then just the floodgates open. And it happened against UNH, and it happened against Maine, and it happened against Notre Dame. There's this tendency for this team just to completely wilt. So it's good to see against a good team like UMass Lowell that they didn't wilt per se. They battled, and that's all you can ask for. I mean, this is just a lost season. So and it stinks too because it's the 100th year for BC hockey. So that was another piece for them. For those of you that are dying to get more recruiting news, it's going to be a quiet period for BC. We're in a recruiting dead period for the next couple of weeks, and so that means there can't be visitors. That communication between the staff and the players have to be a certain way. I think the players have to, or the recruits have to actually initiate the connection. So it's gonna be quiet. So don't expect any last minute visitors or anything like that because they can't. It's illegal right now. So we'll have to wait for a little bit. But as I said on my site, this is also the time where players that are interested can set up visits when it's live again, which is I think in March. So BC will be able to have visitors when there's practices going on, which is good. I also am glad that this is a dead period too, because who the heck wants to visit Massachusetts in February? You're a kid from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and you're like, oh, let's go check out Boston College. Oh, never mind. I'm not going to have 4 years of that. So, waiting a little bit until March isn't the worst thing for Boston College, but there's already some names coming out. There's a free recruiting article I have with a kid that's coming. You can read all about it at bcbulletin.com. And I'll have more recruiting news all throughout the next couple of weeks. I'm sure you're going to want to hear more about that. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back tomorrow to recap the Beanpot, preview BC versus Syracuse, and get into everything else. This is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. You can follow the podcast at Locked On BC. Make sure that you check out that YouTube channel. If you're looking let me throw this out there to you guys. If you just listen to Locked On Boston College, say you're at work and this is your kind of my dulcet tones are what gets you through the day, and you listen on your computer, instead of listening to it on Spotify or Apple, listen to it on YouTube. Honestly, you can do it. It doesn't impact your work. You just have the tab open and you can listen to it. It works just like a podcast, and it helps the podcast tremendously. Doing it on YouTube versus Apple or any of that other stuff actually makes a huge difference. So if you haven't done so already, subscribe to Locked On Boston College on YouTube and listen to our show on YouTube. It really does help. Thank you all, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care, everyone.